My name is Curtis, and I've been married to my wife, Marilyn, for 7 years. Our marriage hasn't been perfect, but I always believed we had a strong bond. However, everything changed last weekend, and I'm still struggling to make sense of it. Marilyn had been talking about this party for weeks. It was being hosted by one of her new co-workers, a guy named Clark. I didn't know much about him other than the fact that he was single and supposedly very charismatic. The way she mentioned him, so casually, yet so often, left me feeling uneasy. At first, I tried to brush it off. I told myself I was overthinking it. I mean, Marilyn has always been the outgoing one in our relationship. She's the type who loves to socialize and make new connections, while I'm more of the quiet, stay-at-home type. But as the date of the party got closer, my discomfort grew. I asked her who else would be there, and she just shrugged, saying, "Oh, the usual crowd from work. You wouldn't know them." When I pressed her for more details, she got defensive, telling me I was making a big deal out of nothing. I told her I wasn't comfortable with her going. It wasn't about Clark or anyone else, at least not entirely. It was about how secretive she was being. In our 7 years together, we've always talked things through, even if we didn't agree. But this time, it felt like she'd already made up her mind, and nothing I said mattered. The night of the party, I sat on the couch, hoping she'd reconsider. I didn't want to fight, but I wanted her to see my side of things. Instead, she came downstairs wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Tight, low-cut, and way more revealing than anything she usually wore. She looked stunning, but it didn't feel like she was dressing up for me. "Do you like it?" she asked, spinning around. I hesitated before answering. "It's nice," I said, my voice flat. She rolled her eyes and grabbed her purse. "Don't wait up," she said. And with that, she was out the door. I sat there for hours, trying to distract myself with TV, but my mind kept racing. Where was she? Who was she with? Was I being paranoid? Or was there something real behind my unease? I didn't text or call her. I didn't want to come across as controlling. But the longer she was gone, the heavier the silence in the house felt. She came home late, well after midnight. I pretended to be asleep when she crawled into bed. The faint smell of alcohol and something floral, a perfume that wasn't hers, lingered in the air. My heart sank, but I didn't say anything. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Marilyn moving around the kitchen. She was humming softly, as if the night before had been nothing out of the ordinary. But for me, it was like waking up with a weight pressing down on my chest. The smell of coffee drifted into the bedroom, but it didn't bring the usual comfort. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the previous night in my head. I couldn't shake the memory of how she'd looked when she left, so confident, so carefree, and how different she seemed now, almost like she was trying too hard to act normal. Eventually, I got up and walked into the kitchen. She was standing by the counter in her robe, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. "Morning," she said, without looking up, her tone chipper. "Morning," I replied, my voice colder than I intended. She glanced at me, raising an eyebrow. "What's with the tone?" I wanted to ask her so many things. Who was at the party? Why had she been so secretive? Why did she smell like someone else's perfume when she came home? But instead, I just shrugged. Nothing. Just tired. She didn't press further. Instead, she started talking about mundane things. how the coffee tasted, the weather, plans for the week. It felt forced, like she was trying to fill the silence before I could say something she didn't want to hear. After a few minutes, I couldn't take it anymore. "Did you have fun last night?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. She froze for a split second before answering, her smile returning just a little too quickly. "Yeah, it was fine. Just a regular work thing. Nothing exciting." I nodded, trying to read her expression. "What time did you get home?" She looked up at the ceiling, pretending to think. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe around midnight." I didn't say anything, but I knew it was much later than that. I'd heard her come in closer to 2 a.m. "Why? Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice a little too sweet. "No," I said quickly, even though everything felt wrong. "Just curious." She smiled and went back to scrolling through her phone. But my gut was telling me something wasn't adding up. I wanted to believe her, but the little details didn't sit right. The dress, the late night, the smell of someone else's perfume. It all painted a picture I didn't want to see. After breakfast, she said she needed to run some errands and left the house. I watched her drive off, feeling like an outsider in my own marriage. I spent the rest of the day pacing, trying to convince myself I was overreacting, but deep down, I knew I wasn't. I decided to check her social media for clues, something I'd never done before. She didn't post anything from the party, which wasn't unusual for her. But when I clicked on the profiles of a few of her co-workers, I found photos from the night before. There she was, in that black dress, standing next to Clark. The two of them looked close. In one photo, he had his arm around her waist, and she was leaning into him, smiling. My heart sank. It wasn't definitive proof of anything, but it felt like a betrayal all the same. By the time she came home, I was a mess. I didn't confront her. I didn't know how. Instead, I acted like everything was normal, even though I felt like my world was falling apart. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with questions I wasn't ready to ask. Who was Marilyn when I wasn't around? And more importantly, who was I in this marriage if I couldn't even bring myself to demand the truth? But I knew I couldn't stay silent forever. The cracks were starting to show, and it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. The morning after I saw those pictures, I couldn't look at Marilyn the same way. Every smile, every casual word she said, felt rehearsed, like she was trying to hide something. I wanted to confront her, I needed to, but I couldn't find the right moment or the right words. It was like the weight of my suspicions had tied my tongue, leaving me stuck in this miserable limbo. I started to notice things I'd never paid attention to before. For example, her phone. Marilyn had always been open with her phone, leaving it on the counter, not caring if I saw her texts or calls. But now, she was glued to it, holding it close, her screen tilted away from me. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she'd lock the screen and place it face down on the table. One evening, while she was in the shower, I saw her phone light up with a message. The notification only showed the initial C. My heart jumped into my throat. I didn't recognize the name, but I had a sickening feeling that C might stand for Clark. I wanted to pick up the phone just to see what the message said, but something held me back. Maybe it was fear. Fear of what I might find. Fear of what it would mean for us. Instead, I just stood there, staring at it, until she came out of the bathroom, her hair wrapped in a towel. She saw me near her phone and froze for a split second before laughing nervously. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice light, but her eyes sharp. "Nothing," I said quickly, stepping away. "Just looking for the remote." She didn't say anything, but she grabbed her phone and slipped it into her pocket. The moment passed, but the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. Over the next few days, I tried to act normal, but inside, I was unraveling. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't enjoy the things I used to. Every time Marilyn left the house, I found myself wondering where she was really going and who she was with. I hated feeling like this, like some paranoid, jealous husband. But I couldn't help it. One night, after she went to bed, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat in the living room, staring at the blank TV screen, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to let it go, to trust her like I always had. But another part of me, the part that had seen those photos, smelled that unfamiliar perfume and noticed the way she guarded her phone, knew I couldn't. I remembered a buddy of mine, Travis, who had gone through a messy divorce a few years back. He'd hired a private investigator to find out if his wife was cheating. And while the results had been painful, at least he'd gotten the truth. The next morning, I called Travis. I hadn't spoken to him in a while, so the conversation started awkwardly. But when I finally told him what was going on, he didn't judge me. "Man, I'm sorry you're dealing with this," he said. "But listen, if you really think something's up, you need to find out for sure. You don't deserve to live in the dark like this." He gave me the number of the investigator he'd used, a guy named Rick. I hesitated for a long time before calling, but eventually I did. Rick was calm and professional, asking me for details about Marilyn's routine, her friends, and anything unusual I'd noticed. I felt a little sick giving him all this information, like I was betraying her somehow. But at the same time, I knew I couldn't keep living like this. Rick assured me he'd be discreet and said he'd get back to me in a week. It felt like the longest week of my life. Every time Marilyn left the house, my mind raced with possibilities. Was she really going to work, meeting friends, or was she with him? "Clark?" Finally, Rick called me with an update. He'd followed Marilyn on one of her errands and had seen her meet up with a man at a cafe. He sent me a photo. It was Clark. My stomach dropped when I saw them together. They weren't doing anything inappropriate, just sitting across from each other, talking. But the way Marilyn was leaning forward, her hand resting lightly on his arm, spoke volumes. Rick promised to keep digging, but I didn't know how much more I could take. Seeing that photo had broken something in me. I wasn't sure if I wanted more proof or if I wanted to pretend it didn't exist. Marilyn came home that evening, cheerful as ever. She kissed me on the cheek and asked how my day was. I played along, forcing a smile, but inside, I felt like a stranger in my own life. The cracks in our marriage were no longer invisible. They were deep, and they were spreading, and I had no idea how to stop them. The days following Rick's call felt like I was living in a haze. Every interaction with Marilyn felt like a performance. Her playing the role of a loving wife, and me pretending that everything was fine. But the truth was eating away at me. The image of her leaning into Clark, her hand on his arm, was burned into my brain. It wasn't outright betrayal, but it was enough to confirm my worst fears. Rick said he'd keep watching, and I agreed. I needed more than just a photo of a coffee meeting. I needed the whole truth, as painful as I knew it would be. but waiting for answers was like being stuck in limbo. I felt restless, distracted, and increasingly irritable. Marilyn must have noticed the shift in me because she started asking questions. "Are you okay?" she'd ask, tilting her head in concern. "You've seemed distant lately." "I'm fine," I'd say, forcing a smile. "Just busy with work." She didn't push, but I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes. I wondered if she suspected I was onto her. A few days later, Rick called again. His tone was more serious this time. "I've got something you need to see," he said. We arranged to meet at his office. My hands were shaking as I drove there, my mind racing with possibilities. When I arrived, Rick handed me a folder. Inside were more photos. In the first few, Marilyn and Clark were sitting in the same cafe. Then there were pictures of them leaving together, walking side by side, their body language intimate. The final photo hit me like a punch to the gut. It was them standing by his car, her hand on his chest, his lips brushing her forehead. I stared at the images, my stomach twisting into knots. It was one thing to suspect, but seeing it laid out so clearly was devastating. "There's more," Rick said, hesitating. He slid a USB drive across the table. "This is from last night. I followed them to a hotel." I didn't know what to say. My hands felt clammy as I picked up the drive. "You don't have to look at it right away," Rick said. "But when you're ready, you'll know." I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I got home, Marilyn was in the kitchen, humming softly as she cooked dinner. The sight of her, so calm and carefree, made me feel sick. I couldn't sit down and pretend everything was fine, so I told her I wasn't hungry and went straight to the bedroom. I locked the door, plugged the USB drive into my laptop, and pressed play. The footage was grainy but clear enough. It showed Marilyn and Clark walking into the hotel lobby, laughing and talking like they didn't have a care in the world. They approached the reception desk, where Clark handed over a credit card. Marilyn stood close to him, her hand resting lightly on his back. They were given a room key, and the footage ended with them stepping into the elevator together. I slammed the laptop shut, my chest heaving. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. There it was, proof that my wife, the woman I'd built a life with, was having an affair. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the dark screen of my laptop, replaying every moment of our relationship in my mind. I thought about the nights we spent laughing together, the promises we made, the future we'd planned. And now, it all felt like a cruel joke. The next morning, Marilyn acted like nothing was wrong. She kissed me on the cheek before heading off to work, completely oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers. But I wasn't ready. I needed to figure out what to say, how to say it, and what I wanted to happen next. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to throw the photos in her face and make her feel the same pain she'd caused me. But another part of me, the part that still loved her despite everything, just wanted to understand why. That evening, I called Rick again. I told him I needed more, not just photos and footage. I needed the full story. Who was Clark? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, why? Rick promised to dig deeper, and I hung up, feeling a mix of relief and dread. I didn't know what else he'd find, but I knew one thing for sure. The cracks in our marriage had become too big to ignore. The truth was coming, whether I was ready for it or not. The next few days passed in a fog. My conversations with Marilyn were hollow and forced, like I was playing a part in some surreal play. She went about her life as if nothing had changed, smiling, laughing, humming her favorite songs while cooking. But every time I looked at her, I couldn't stop picturing her walking into that hotel with Clark. The memories of our life together, once so comforting, now felt like a cruel reminder of what I'd lost. Rick called me again 3 days later. His voice was calm as always, but I could sense the gravity of what he had to tell me. "I've done some deeper digging," he said. "I think you're going to want to sit down for this." I met him at his office that evening, bracing myself for what was coming. He handed me another folder, thicker this time. Inside were copies of emails and messages between Marilyn and Clark. They were flirtatious at first, then explicit, filled with plans to meet, coded phrases, and even references to me. "She keeps him on a pedestal," Rick said quietly as I flipped through the pages. "But it's clear he doesn't feel the same. He's seeing other women too." Hearing that made my stomach churn. She wasn't just betraying me. She was throwing everything we had away for a man who didn't even respect her enough to stay faithful. Rick also found out that the affair had been going on for months, starting long before the party. Clark was the one who'd invited her, knowing full well how it would look to me. "There's one more thing," Rick said, pulling out a small stack of papers. "I didn't want to assume, but I thought you should know." The papers were financial records, joint accounts, credit card statements, and withdrawals Marilyn had been making. I scanned them quickly, my blood boiling. She had been taking money from our savings, and spending it on fancy dinners, gifts, and even that hotel. "She's using your money to fund the affair," Rick said softly. I couldn't speak. My hands trembled as I clutched the papers. My mind raced, replaying every moment of our marriage. The vacations we'd saved for, the sacrifices we'd made, the trust I'd put in her. All of it was being used to build a fantasy life with another man. When I got home that night, Marilyn was already in bed. I sat in the living room, staring at the folder Rick had given me. Part of me wanted to wake her up right then and there, to throw the evidence in her face and demand an explanation. But another part of me, the part that was still numb with shock, couldn't do it. Not yet. Instead, I stayed up all night, thinking about how to confront her. What would I say? Would she deny it? Would she try to lie her way out of it? Or would she admit everything and beg for forgiveness? I didn't know which possibility scared me more. The next morning, Marilyn seemed cheerful as ever. She kissed me on the cheek, told me she had another work meeting after hours, and left without a second thought. As soon as she was gone, I went to our bedroom and started searching. I felt sick, invading her privacy like this. But I needed answers. I looked through drawers, checked her closet, and even flipped through her planner. That's when I found it. Tucked into the back of her purse, a small envelope with Clark's name scrawled on the front. Inside was a note written in her handwriting. It was short, but devastating. "Clark, last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. Curtis suspects something, but I'll handle it. I'll see you again soon. M." I sank onto the bed, clutching the note in my hands. Any lingering doubts I had were gone. It wasn't just in my head. She was lying to me, sneaking around and planning to continue doing it. That evening, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. When she came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the folder from Rick in front of me. She walked in, her smile faltering when she saw my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting her purse down. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I opened the folder and slid the photos across the table. Her face went pale as she looked at them. "Care to explain?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. She stared at the photos, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I don't know what this is," she stammered. "This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like," I snapped, my composure cracking. "I know about Clark. I know about the hotel. I know about the money. So don't you dare sit there and lie to me." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I thought she might actually feel guilty. But then her expression hardened. "Okay, fine," she said, crossing her arms. "Yes, I've been seeing Clark. But it's not what you think. It's not serious. You've been so distant lately, Curtis. I didn't feel appreciated. I needed someone who made me feel alive again." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. I stared at her, barely able to process what she was saying. "So, this is my fault?" I asked, my voice rising. "You betrayed me because you didn't feel appreciated?" She shrugged, her tears forgotten. "Maybe if you'd paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." I stood up, my hands shaking with anger. "Don't you dare put this on me, Marilyn. You made this choice. You destroyed our marriage. And for what? For some guy who doesn't even care about you?" She flinched at that but didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed her purse and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a long time, my mind racing. This wasn't the woman I married. The Marilyn I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. But one thing was clear. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. After Marilyn stormed out, I sat in silence, staring at the empty space where she had been. My hands were still shaking, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I had just confronted my wife about her affair, and instead of remorse, she blamed me. I replayed the conversation over and over in my head, each word cutting deeper than the last. I needed someone who made me feel alive again. What about me? What about our marriage? Had I ever mattered to her at all? I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake in bed, waiting for her to come home, but she didn't. By morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Marilyn. "I need space. Staying with a friend tonight. We'll talk later." No apology, no regret. Just space. I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to smash my phone against the wall. But instead of responding, I got up, grabbed a trash bag, and started packing. I didn't know where she was, and I didn't care. I wasn't waiting around for her to decide if she wanted to keep lying to me or not. I went through the bedroom, stuffing her things into the bag, her clothes, her makeup, the perfume that wasn't meant for me. By the time I was done, my hands were sore from gripping the fabric too hard. I set the bag by the door, knowing she'd see it the moment she walked in. Then I left. I needed air. I needed to clear my head before I did something I'd regret. I ended up at a bar, staring at a glass of whiskey I barely tasted. Everything around me felt distant, voices blending into a low hum. I used to believe in love, in loyalty. I believed in us. But now I wasn't sure I believed in anything. I didn't go home that night. I stayed at a cheap motel, my mind spiraling. When morning came, I checked my phone again. No new messages. She hadn't even asked where I was. That was the moment I realized this marriage was already over. It was just a matter of who would walk away first, and I wasn't going to let it be her. I drove home the next morning, my stomach twisting into knots. The bag of Marilyn's things was still by the door, untouched. That meant she hadn't come home. I should have felt relieved, maybe even free. Instead, all I felt was exhaustion. 7 years of marriage reduced to this. Lies, betrayal, and now silence. I sat on the couch, staring at the floor, waiting for her to show up. I wasn't going to text. I wasn't going to call. If she still had any respect left for me, she'd come back and face what she had done. Hours passed. The sun started to set, and then, finally, the front door creaked open. Marilyn stepped inside, her face blank. She saw the bag and let out a dry laugh. "Really? You're throwing me out?" I folded my arms, keeping my voice calm. "I packed your things. Where you go from here is up to you." She rolled her eyes and tossed her keys onto the counter. "So that's it? You're not even going to fight for this?" "Fight for what?" I asked, my voice steady. "For a woman who lied to me. For someone who used our money to sneak around with another man." I shook my head. "No, Marilyn. I'm done." She crossed her arms, her expression shifting. "So that's it, huh? You're just going to walk away? What happened to for better or worse?" I let out a bitter laugh. "You killed that vow the moment you stepped into that hotel." She opened her mouth to argue, but stopped. For the first time, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not regret, just realization. She knew she had pushed too far, and there was no coming back from this. Marilyn let out a slow breath, looking at the bag by the door. "I guess I underestimated you," she muttered. I didn't respond. I just waited. She grabbed the bag, slung it over her shoulder, and turned toward the door. But before she left, she looked back at me one last time. "No one else will ever love you the way I did," she said softly. I met her gaze, my voice calm but firm. "Good." And with that, she walked out. The moment the door shut behind her, I exhaled, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. It was over. Finally. After Marilyn left, the silence in the house felt different. Not empty, not painful, just peaceful. For the first time in weeks, my chest didn't feel tight. I wasn't waiting for the next lie, the next excuse, the next betrayal. It was over. I had finally let go of something that was already gone. The next few days, I focused on myself. I cleaned the house, got rid of every reminder of her, and even started going to the gym again, something I had neglected for years. It felt good to take control of my life again. Then one evening, my phone buzzed. A message from Travis. "Haven't seen you in a while. Drinks this Friday?" I hesitated for a moment. The old me, the one who stayed home waiting for Marilyn, making excuses for her, might have said no. But that man was gone. Yeah, let's do it. That Friday night, I walked into the bar feeling lighter than I had in years. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I was free. And as I laughed with old friends, surrounded by people who actually valued me, I realized something.